equals miracles. Have you ever been in a moment where what you have is clearly not enough for what you need? Where you look at your resources, your strength, your wisdom, and say, this just won't cut it? Life is full of what I like to call multiplication problems. These are moments where the math of our life doesn't seem to add up. Our needs far exceed our supply. And if we're honest, those moments can be discouraging, overwhelming, and even paralyzing. In the work that I do, working at a nonprofit, helping children and families who are in crisis, it often feels that way. Especially serving in LA County, where there's over 2 million children who are connected in some way to the child welfare system. The need is overwhelming. The pain is deep, and many days I look at what little I have to offer and think, what difference can little old me make? It can feel discouraging, like trying to feed a crowd with crumbs. So tonight I want to preach to you about Matthew 14, 13 to 21. The story of Jesus feeding over 5,000 people with only 5 loaves and 2 fish. The story shows us that when we bring our small offering to a limitless God, He multiplies it beyond what we can imagine. So before we get to the miracle, let's look at the emotional state of Jesus. In verse 13 and 14, so Matthew 14, chapter 14, and we're going to look at verses 13 and 14. And the verses say, when Jesus heard what had happened, He withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds followed Him on foot from the towns. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, He had compassion on them and healed their sick. We see that Jesus had just heard of the death of John the Baptist. This was his cousin, his forerunner in ministry. Jesus was grieving, and he tries to withdraw to a solitary place to find rest and peace. But the crowd follows him. Thousands of people have walked around the lake to be near him. Now, most of us in that situation would have turned the crowd away. We would have said, not today, I'm dealing with something. But Jesus, even in his grief, even though he was so sad, he was moved by compassion. He healed their sick. He taught them. He gave himself when most of us would have probably shut down. And I will be the first to say that I would have totally shut down. Probably would have started screaming at the people, telling them to get away from me, maybe even running to, deep in the ocean so they wouldn't follow. So this shows us something powerful. Even when life hurts, even when life feels so sad, God is still moving. Even when you feel like you're running on empty, God can still work through you. Compassion doesn't stop because you're tired. God can use your pain as a platform to show people of his power. So let's continue on with the story. We're going to move on to verses 15 to 17. And these verses say, as evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food." 16. Jesus replied, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." 17. "We have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish," they answered. The disciples come to Jesus with a very practical concern. It's late. They're in a remote place. They couldn't just walk over to the nearest little market and grab some extra food, like when we just run to the pizza place and just grab some pizzas. This is a massive crowd that needs food. And even then, if there was that little market, it probably would have cost a ton of money to buy food enough for everyone. So they say, send them away to the villages to buy food. In other words, Jesus, we can't handle this. This is way too big. It's just, there's just too many people here. Like, we don't have enough. Trust, we don't have enough. So Jesus responds with a shocking command. You give them something to eat. And I can only imagine the disciples probably looking at each other in disbelief, replying, "We have only 5 loaves and 2 fish." Jesus, hello, 5 and 2. Maybe we can give them a little crumb here, maybe like a little crumb there, maybe a sliver of fish, I guess. Maybe just a taste. You could taste the bread, taste the fish. However, that word only is key. It reveals their mindset. They are focused on their limitations instead of Jesus' power. But admitting limitation isn't a bad thing. It's the first step towards a miracle. God doesn't ask us to pretend. He invites us to be honest. So it wasn't a bad thing to seriously question how on earth were they expected to feed 5,000 people? That's not even enough to feed my family of 7. We would probably need a couple more loaves of bread and a couple more fish. Now to use that to feed 5,000? That's just crazy. So in your life, maybe you feel like you have only a little strength, only a little faith, only a little time. Maybe you feel inadequate to face what's in front of you. But admitting your need is not weakness. It's a gateway to surrender. And surrender is where God begins to move. Now, Jesus doesn't dismiss the 5 loaves and 2 fish. He says in Matthew 14:18, "Bring them here to me." What a beautiful invitation. Jesus is saying, what you have may not be enough, but bring it to me. So often we hold back because we think that what we have isn't worthy. We say things like, I only know a little bit of the Bible. I'm new to all of this. I don't have all those verses memorized. Or maybe I can only serve in small ways. Maybe I'm just so busy, I only have a few minutes to pray. Or even, I am too young to serve the Lord. Lord, I'm only 5 years old. Lord, I'm only 10. Lord, I'm only 11. Lord, I'm only 12. I can't serve you. But God is not asking for protection. For perfection. He's asking for obedience. He's asking for each and one of you to trust in Him. When we bring our small offering to Him, He blesses it, breaks it, and multiplies it. Just like in Matthew 14:19, when He directed the people to sit down on the grass, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, He gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then He gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. Not only that, but notice how Jesus exactly does it. He involves the disciples. He breaks the bread, He gives the bread and fish back to them to distribute. He doesn't work around them. He works through them. And He wants to work through each and one of you. Your obedience is the channel through which someone else might receive their breakthrough. The way someone else might learn of the Lord. The way someone else might get to experience just a little bit of God's love and compassion. So this reminds us that God often does His greatest miracles not in a vacuum, but in the middle of community. The bread was multiplied as it passed through the hands of the disciples to the people. That's a picture of ministry. God may place something small in your hands, but when you move in faith and pass it on, it multiplies in the process. When you're up here sharing the word, when you're teaching a small study, when you're singing for the Lord, those are all ways it passes and it multiplies. You are being blessed with being able to use your voice, use your hands, and that blessing is getting multiplied and shared with those around you. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to be strong enough, loud enough, talented enough, or influential enough. All you need to do is bring what you have. Bring your 5 loaves and 2 fish. Bring your time, bring your energy, bring your story, and trust that as you give, God is multiplying what you thought wasn't enough. So bring your worship, even when it feels weak. Bring your testimony, even when it feels messy. Bring your heart, even when it feels broken. What you have is enough when you give it to the one who is more than enough. The story ends with Matthew 14:20-21, saying, "They all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. The number of those who ate was about 5,000 men, besides women and children." Everyone ate, everyone was satisfied, and there was still 12 baskets of leftovers. One for each disciple who questioned Jesus for a moment. Isn't that just like God? Not only does He provide, but He also teaches. He shows the disciples and us that He can do more with less than we ever imagined. This is the nature of our God. He is not the God of just enough. He is not the God of more than, He is the God of more than enough. He doesn't just meet the need, He exceeds it. He's the God who brings increase out of our insufficiency and abundance out of the lack. Here's the powerful truth. The disciples didn't perform the miracle. Jesus did. All they did was bring what they had, obey His instructions, and serve the people. God did the rest. And that's our position too. It's Jesus times our abilities, and that will give us a miracle. We are not called to manufacture the miracle. We are not called to go out and do miracles. We are called to make the move of faith. We live in a culture that teaches us to hustle, to push harder to make things happen. But the kingdom of God works differently. God doesn't need you to grind harder. He's asking you to trust deeper. He's looking for people who will surrender their not enough and let Him show up as more than enough. When we obey God, we partner with Him in something that goes far beyond what we could ever do on our own. It's not about how much you have. It's about whose hands it is in. 5 loaves and 2 fish in your hands feeds a lunchbox. In Jesus' hands, it feeds multitudes. So what if you started seeing your limitations as invitations? Not limitations, invitations. What if you believed that your lack was simply the setup for God to display His sufficiency? You bring the offering. You take the step. You say the prayer. You go out and share the word. You sow the seed, and God brings the miracle. So as we close tonight, I want to ask you a simple question. What are your 5 loaves and 2 fish? What have you been holding back because it seems too small? What have you been holding back because you think it is not good enough for Jesus? Is it your time? Is it your age? Is it your voice? Is it maybe your testimony? Stop waiting to have more. Stop waiting to feel ready. Bring what you have to Jesus. Trust Him to bless it, break it, and multiply it. Don't put pressure on yourself to do all of that, because you are only one part of the multiplication problem. You have to remember that you are not in this alone. This equation would look totally different if Jesus was not in that equation. If we had my abilities plus money, that probably wouldn't get me miracles. No, that most likely won't get me miracles. If we got my abilities times extra work, that definitely will also not give me miracles. And that is why it is written that way. Jesus times my abilities, Jesus times your abilities will equal miracles. The disciples could have missed the miracle. They could have said, this isn't enough, Jesus. Let's not even try. You know what? Let's just go home already. Or you know what? Let's just go to the corner behind the boat and let's start eating it ourselves. Let everybody else fend for themselves. But because they obeyed what Jesus said, feed them. Bring me the fish and the bread. They were able to see God do something incredible. Now we are also being blessed by that. That was a miracle that keeps on giving till this day. And that is something that you yourselves can do. When you obey God, the miracle that Jesus can help you achieve can be something that will be for generations. So today, God is inviting you into something greater. He's not looking for perfection. He's looking for surrender. He's not asking for your strength. He's asking for your obedience. If you find yourselves in the middle of a multiplication problem, remember, you bring the offering and God will bring the miracle. So I'm going to ask that you all please stand as we end our time in prayer. And as we enter this time in prayer, reflect upon what are your loaves, what are your fishes, what is it that you have to offer. And pray so the Lord can come tonight and help you multiply those abilities. Multiply those blessings. Multiply whatever you have to be able to share with those around you. So everyone bow your